always? Yeah, no?
Yes, please. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to this press conference of the President of the European Council and the President of the European Commission following the G7 leaders meeting. We have press physically present here and press digitally connected. First, let me point out that we have translation in French, English and German in place. And I'll give the floor first to the President of the European Council.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We just participated in the virtual G7 leaders meeting on Afghanistan. First, we tackled what remains our most pressing priority, the safe evacuation of the coalition citizens, Afghan staff and their families. The EU and its member states spare no effort to evacuate EU citizens and those who have partnered trustfully with us. And we are concerned about their ability to safely reach the Kabul airport. We call on the new Afghan authorities to allow free passage to all foreign and Afghan citizens who wish to get to the airport. We have also raised this issue with our American friends and partners on two particular aspects. First, the need to secure the airport as long as necessary to complete the operations. And second, a fair and equitable access to the airport for all nationals entitled to evacuation. On humanitarian and migration, I'll just make two remarks. First, the EU will do its part to support the safety and proper living conditions of Afghans who flee their country. We will work with the countries in the region, especially Iran, Pakistan and Central Asia, to address the different needs. International protection will be needed for those facing persecution and for other vulnerable Afghans. And EU member states will contribute to this international effort. Second point, let's be clear. Let's not allow the creation of a new market for smugglers and human traffickers. And we are determined to keep the migratory flows under control and the EU's borders protected. Today, it's too early to decide what kind of relations we will develop with the new Afghan authorities. We call for an inclusive political settlement, and if we want to remain a positive influence for the Afghan people, especially in supporting their basic needs, we'll have to deal with the new authorities, and this will be subject to strict conditions regarding the deeds and attitude of the new regime, both in preserving the political, economic and social achievements for the Afghan citizens and their human rights, notably of women, girls and minorities, and in terms of the international obligations of Afghanistan, in particular security, the fight against terrorism and drug trafficking. On security, the cooperation between NATO and other allies will be key. Sharing data among allies and partners to prevent entry of foreign terrorist fighters will also play an important role. Finally, on the geopolitical implications of these events, ending the military operation in Afghanistan is not the end of our commitment to promoting the rule of law, democracy and human rights in the world. On the contrary, we must be more determined than ever. This must be clear to actors who are trying to take advantage of the current situation. The EU will continue to firmly protect and promote its interests and values, and to conclude, there will be more lessons to draw from what happened in Afghanistan. These events show that developing our strategic autonomy while keeping our alliances as strong as ever is of the utmost importance for the future of Europe. In due time, I propose a discussion on this question to my fellow leaders of the European Council. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam President, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Before entering into the subject, I would like to thank our colleagues from the External Action Service for their hard and dedicated work over the last days, and also the strong support we got from the member states, especially France, Italy, Belgium and Spain, concerning the evacuation of the EU delegation and the Afghan staff. So I'm very grateful that most of the EU's staff, and including the Afghan staff, including their families, have been evacuated now from Afghanistan and are safe. Now turning towards the G7 we just had. First of all, I want to thank the United Kingdom presidency for convening this meeting. We all agreed that it is our moral duty to help the Afghan people and to provide as much as possible support as conditions allow. The situation is indeed a tragedy for the Afghan people, and it is a major setback for the international community. It was therefore timely that the G7 met, and it was very good that we had as guests the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. In this meeting of the G7, we discussed evacuations, immediate humanitarian aid, longer-term development assistance, and possible scenarios for refugees in need of protection. On the humanitarian aid, let me tell you that our key EU operations on medical facilities, food distribution, emergency water supply, and sanitation are mostly still running. That is good. But of course, the events we see these days create significant additional needs. We need to help mostly those who are at immediate risk, and those are women, girls and children who make up the vast majority of internally displaced people. 80% of the internally displaced people in Afghanistan are women and girls. And up to now, the number runs up to around 3.7 million internally displaced people in Afghanistan. And this is why there was broad determination to step up contribution in humanitarian aid. I announced that the Commission will propose to almost quadruple the humanitarian aid coming from the EU budget. We had planned initially for more than 50 million for the year 2021. We will now increase it to over 200 million euros for the year 2021. And this will help meet the urgent needs of Afghans, both in Afghanistan but also, of course, in the neighboring host countries. The second topic I want to address is the discussion about the development assistance. I and many others stressed that the future development assistance has to be condition-based. It always is condition-based, linked to fundamental values, human rights, of course women's rights, and it is self-speaking that the development assistance of the future has also to be strictly condition-based. As you might know, we have 1 billion euros set aside for the next 7 years for Afghanistan in the EU development assistance. This aid is now frozen, and it is frozen until we have solid guarantees and credible actions on the ground that the conditions are being met. Finally, on migration, as I said, the people most at risk are educated women, are girls, female journalists, human rights activists, female teachers, judges, lawyers, just to name some. 50 countries took part in the ISAF NATO mission, and 36 countries took part in Resolute Support mission. So to protect these most vulnerable is clearly a matter for global cooperation, and it has to be dealt as such from the start. These people should not fall into smugglers' hands. They need safe pathways. And therefore, I welcome that during the G7, Canada announced and the UK announced significant numbers for resettlement, 21,000 respective to 20,000. Also, the United States announced their commitment for resettlement. It is important that this issue, as it has to be dealt on a global level, is coordinated. And it is good that we have in place the resettlement forum in which not only the Commission and Member States are, but also the UNHCR, the IOM, the United States, Canada, and there we can coordinate resettlement efforts in the manner it is needed now in this acute situation. I think beyond those I have just named, all other countries who took part in the NATO mission should contribute to this effort too. The European Union is ready to play its role too. We are looking into necessary budgetary means to support EU member states who will step up and help resettle. Alongside these very targeted measures for a well-defined group, our main effort should be to ensure that, as I've said, internally displaced Afghans are supported, or the international community contributes to their support in the neighbouring countries. So the support also for the region is of utmost importance, and therefore we will continue, of course, also as a European Union to work with the countries in the immediate region. Finally, let me stress once again that these events we see these days all underline the urgent need for the Member States and the European Parliament to find an agreement on our proposed Pact on Migration and Asylum. We need a fully functioning system in place that allows us to effectively manage our borders, to ensure solidarity between Member States, and to cooperate with countries of origin and transit. Merci.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll first take a few questions here in the press room, and I'll start with Lailuma Sadid, correspondent for Afghan News. Please take the floor. It's a bit too high, apparently, the microphone.
Yes,
take the microphone in the hand.
Thank you very much. Should I remove the mask?
It's okay.
Okay. As an Afghan journalist, I'm the only one to work for Afghan media, unfortunately. For the moment, you know the situation, but I'm correspondent also for Brussels Morning. I would like to ask how many more policies failed follow-up to arrive in the good, workable one? With whom, for the moment, would you like to make decision to see what is going on for Afghanistan and also to recognition the Taliban? Without any condition, I think it will be again the other mistake that the Europeans doing for the Afghans. And also the second question, if I may ask, you said that you start making some help for the Afghans out of the country, for example, in Pakistan. As I remember it very well, during the past, during the Mujahideen regime, you helped not only EU, all the world helped a lot for the refugees in Pakistan, but they built madrasas. They built the extremely terrorist group there, and they came back, and we see they have relation with this terrorist group, Al-Qaeda, and all this kind of person in the world. And once again, if
Lailuma,
this time,
please keep it focused. What is your second question, please?
Yeah, my second question is, without any condition, please don't recognize the Taliban. Think about the women and also for the other activists in Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
We all agree, and it was very clear during this G7 meeting, that it's very fundamental to express a clear message from the international community. And this G7 meeting is an important first step, but it follows also important meetings at the level of the Security Council of the United Nations, and Antonio Guterres participated also in this G7 meeting. And in our opinion, the EU, with the support of all our member states, we are totally convinced that we should be very clear on different points. First of all, we need to guarantee the free access for the humanitarian aid in order to support the people in Afghanistan, point one. Point two, we consider it's very important to guarantee that the fight against the international terrorism and the terrorism in general will be a clear priority. Point three, we have worked a lot in order to promote the fundamental values, human rights, the protection of women's rights and the rights of the girls, and also the rights of the minorities. It must be a priority. We are very clear on that. And also the fight against the drug trafficking is also an important element. And with the G7 colleagues, we agreed that we will work very closely with them in order to express a very clear message. But it's also needed to work with other members of the international community. Mario Draghi is the president of the G20 because Italy has the presidency of the G20. He planned some initiatives in the framework of the G20, and we also think that we need to speak with other members of the international community in order to give a very strong message. We are also very clear. We have only operational contacts with the Taliban, and this is needed in order to make sure that we can provide a safe evacuation as much as possible. And the next days will remain key. And for the EU, it's very clear that the first priority is to make sure that the conditions that I've mentioned will be fulfilled.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, the purpose of this meeting was to coordinate and to create unity, and that was successful. And indeed, we touched on many topics, but also on those you were mentioning. Very clearly, it is, for us, there are very clear preconditions to talks with the Taliban. And as Charles Michel said, there are operational talks that are necessary for the daily proceedings around Kabul and the airport. But this is completely separated from political talks or any question of recognition. And the G7 was and is very clear that we have very strict conditions and that we stay united in the question of a recognition that is not on the table with the Taliban. The second topic is, yes, we have to work with the countries in the region. We have to work with the countries in the region because of the Afghan refugees that are there and that need support. And here, indeed, the G20 forum is certainly also the right room to discuss broader questions in a different manner. So Charles Michel just said that Mario Draghi is, of course, being a member of G7. In light of G7, I'm certain that there will be steps following. And lastly, thank you very much for your question on women that need now help. The focus has to be on the women, to get the women in safety now. And we know who they are. There's an enormous effort in the international community, and I witness it by the hour every day, to protect and to get those women out of Afghanistan. Therefore, this resettlement coordination is so important, and the message has to be very clear. We know who they are. We know how much they have been fighting by our side. We know how exposed they are, and therefore they need protection. Absolutely. The whole focus has to be on that now.
Thank you, Madam President. Thomas, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung.
Thanks a lot. A question, first of all, to you, President Michel. You've said that the Kabul airport needs to be secured as long as it's necessary. Did you get any commitment on that by President Biden? Und eine Frage an die Kommissionspräsidentin. Der Taliban-Sprecher hat heute Nachmittag eine Pressekonferenz in Kabul gegeben und gesagt, dass die Taliban dagegen sind, dass Menschen das Land verlassen, hat gesagt, die sollen nach Hause gehen. Man brauche gerade die Gebildeten für den Wiederaufbau und die seien auch nicht gefährdet. Es gebe keine Listen. Was antworten Sie darauf?
I can confirm that several leaders during the G7 meeting have expressed concerns about this timing, the 31st of August, and we had also the opportunity to express our opinion on that, also because we are in close contact with prime ministers, head of state at the European level, and they told us that for them it's very important to try to extend this timing. I don't intend to speak on behalf of the President of the United States, but we had the opportunity to exchange views about this topic, point one. And point two, after later, the 21st or later, we will see. In any case, it will be key to guarantee safe passages in order to make sure that it will be possible in the future for Afghans to leave the country when it will be needed. And that's why also we are very current. We are in contact with countries in the region, with the neighboring countries, in order also to be in dialogue with them. We discussed also the situation, the status of the airport in Kabul, in order to see how in the future it will be possible to guarantee that the humanitarian aid will have access to the country. And we know that an airport is always an important infrastructure in order to guarantee a safe access for the humanitarian aid.
Ja, vielen Dank. Wir haben vor ein paar Tagen auch die Taliban gehört, dass sie gesagt haben, die Frauen werden ihre vollen Rechte haben innerhalb des Rahmens der Scharia, was immer das heißt. Frauen, die das Land verlassen wollen, die sollten alle unsere Hilfe kriegen, dass sie dazu in der Lage sind. Und das ist genau das Gebot der Stunde jetzt. Die internationale Gemeinschaft tut alles, um ihnen die Möglichkeit zu geben, rauszukommen aus Afghanistan, von Kabul über den Flughafen. Und das ist auch unsere Pflicht. Es gibt aber auch viele, viele Frauen, die in der Region bereits sind, also außerhalb von Afghanistan, die unsere Hilfe genauso brauchen. Und das ist das Thema des Resettlement. Wenn wir uns anschauen, die irreguläre Migration, da sind 95% Männer. Aber diejenigen, die in der Region die meiste Hilfe brauchen, sind in der großen, überwiegenden Zahl Frauen und Kinder. Und deshalb ist es so wichtig, diese sicheren Wege zu ermöglichen, dass sie nicht in die Hände der Schmuggler und Schlepper fallen. Deshalb bin ich sehr dankbar, dass Kanada diese Ankündigung gemacht hat, dass das Vereinigte Königreich das angekündigt hat, die Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika ebenfalls. Im Augenblick ist der volle Fokus natürlich auf die Evakuierung und viele dieser Frauen werden auch mit evakuiert. Aber die zweite große Frage im Raum ist dann auch gezieltes Resettlement, gerade für diese Frauen, die in Gefahr sind.
Danke sehr. We have Lawrence Norman connected virtually. Lawrence, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm going to just chase up on the two questions you asked a little bit. Can you, with respect,
Lawrence, I'm sorry to intervene. Sorry, the sound is not very good. Could you please approach or speak clearly to the camera, to the microphone, please?
I'll try again. Is that better?
It's quite far. We don't
okay. Go on, someone else.
Is that quite? We'll come back to you, Lawrence. I'll go to Dave Clark from AFP. Dave, you're next.
Hello, is my audio clearer?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, thank you very much. You've spoken of your moral obligation to help vulnerable Afghans beyond your own staff and their relatives. Obviously, the window is closing at Kabul airport now. There will be human rights activists, women's rights activists, NGO workers, artists, and journalists who won't get out this week. Obviously, there will have to be a resettlement plan for them. How long will it take to arrange this? And how large do you foresee it being?
Yes. So, most important is here the very close cooperation that fits to the question I just got before that, to a very close cooperation with the UNHCR. because they are the ones who know best about how to proceed. We should not forget that we are in a transitory phase where we should not underestimate that we have some leverage. Afghanistan is a poor country. There's an enormous need of support. They have horrible droughts. COVID is in the country too, just to name a few topics. And the humanitarian aid will be there and is there, but it also is a possibility to be in contact with the people in power, to make understood that for a certain group we need unconditional access, and we need to be able to support with all means, as I've outlined with the humanitarian aid. To get people out of the country, my experience is the best is to work with the United Nations, who are experienced, the UNHCR, the IOM. They know exactly what's going on.
Thank you. Beatriz Rios, Antena 3. Beatriz.
Thank you for that. Can you hear me?
Perfectly, yes.
Okay, that's great. It's a little bit of a follow-up to Dave's question. I was wondering if the Commission is going to make a concrete pledge of that resettlement of refugees from Afghanistan. And you actually, President, mentioned the question of aid for those member states that step up and are willing to reallocate these people. Does that mean it's going to be a voluntary system? And because one of those countries that have voluntary is indeed Spain, and they're hosting right now some of those evacuees, I was wondering if there is already a plan to resettle those people from Spain to different member states, and if not, when can we expect that? And maybe because this is a question again about voluntary resettlement, the role of the different member states, can we expect an European Council to be organized in the coming days to try to coordinate all these different measures? Thank you.
So, first of all, their resettlement is voluntary, without any question. And indeed, the resettlement forum I was mentioning initially that we have in place, so a structure that does exist, that is experienced in tackling those topics, is in a phase of pledging. Of course, this has to be then focused on the question of Afghanistan, but there it is important to have a coordinated approach, and I think this global forum, this international forum, is the right response for a crisis of the international dimension in Afghanistan. It's not an EU related, but it is the international community. Resettlement is voluntary. Indeed, I know that the member states, the European Commission itself cannot resettle, but because there is no territory that the European Commission has. So there need to be, for example, humanitarian visa. They are given by the member states, of course. The member states themselves are at the moment being discussing among them the question of those who have been evacuated, who have the humanitarian visas, and who indeed try now to find a final destination. I think it will be certainly a question that will be tackled in the next days in the appropriate council formation with the ministers for interior, for the interior and migration, because that's where these questions have to be dealt with initially within the European Union. I'm convinced that it is also high time in this respect to discuss how to move forward with the Pact for Migration and Asylum. It is of utmost importance because this gives us the instruments to deal with these situations, to get out of ad hoc reactions and to go into a system where we have the management tools that we need. And therefore, there are many reasons to push really for improvement or progress on the file in the European Council and in the European Parliament and in the Council formation.
Je voudrais ajouter pour réagir à la question posée que, naturellement, les derniers jours, mon équipe, moi-même, avons été en contact permanent avec les États membres, et spécialement ceux qui étaient plus directement impliqués dans les opérations d'évacuation à Kaboul. Nous avons visité ensemble le centre en Espagne qui a réagi immédiatement en se présentant comme un hub, et j'ai souligné que très rapidement, dans les heures qui ont suivi l'initiative espagnole, plusieurs États membres se sont positionnés pour annoncer qu'ils étaient disposés à réinstaller un certain nombre d'Afghans qui étaient localisés en Espagne. C'est un premier point. Deux, il y a, comme cela a été indiqué, un travail intense de coopération, de coordination au niveau ministériel. Et c'est normal. Cependant, il est certain, comme chaque fois que l'on est confronté à un sujet important et sensible, nous veillons au niveau des chefs d'État et de gouvernement à se coordonner, à dialoguer, à se parler et à apprécier si c'est utile à un moment donné d'avoir un certain nombre d'initiatives pour donner des impulsions, pour donner des orientations, afin de soutenir plus de capacités de coordination européenne. Mais je rejoins ce qui a été dit, il y a une dimension européenne, il y a aussi une dimension internationale. Le sujet de la migration en lien avec la situation actuelle en Afghanistan relève bien sûr de la responsabilité de l'Union européenne. Nous avons des devoirs à assumer dans le cadre international par rapport à cela, mais la communauté internationale dans son ensemble a aussi des responsabilités à assumer. C'est le point qui a été évoqué notamment dans cette réunion du G7 cet après-midi.
We'll try again with Lawrence Norman from the Wall Street Journal. Lawrence?
Yeah, let's try it again. Is that better?
Yes.
Excellent. President Michel, with respect, we're not asking you to speak for the US, but we are asking what was President Biden's response to your concerns and European concerns about the airport shutting on August the 31st? Did he leave open the possibility that it would be extended beyond that?
Vous ne m'en voudrez pas, je l'espère, mais je n'ai pas l'intention d'exprimer les points de vue, de citer les commentaires qui ont été exprimés par les leaders qui ont participé à la réunion. Je peux vous indiquer en tout cas, et je le répète, que plusieurs leaders, cela a été notre cas à Ursula et moi, avons mentionné les préoccupations en lien avec le timing du 31 et ce qui se passe après le 31, premier point. Et nous avons écouté les réponses qui ont été apportées. Je ne doute pas que dans la conférence de presse qu'il tient en ce moment, le président Biden répondra aux questions des journalistes si elles sont posées sur ce sujet.
I'll take one last question here in the room. René van Rijkenvorsel. Alsjeblieft. Elsevier. You can please go to the microphone, otherwise we can't translate your question.
I'm still new, so I don't know how it works yet. I have a question about a remark yesterday about this rapid reaction force of 50,000 people that is announced. Mr. Borrell yesterday talked about a kind of intervention force of 50,000 people. Does the Commission and does the Council support this idea?
I'm not aware of that. United.
Sorry. You don't understand me?
We have understood you,
Yeah.
but I'm not aware of this comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Are you?
No. Thank you for this question. This concludes our press conference. Thank you for tuning in and see you soon.
Your call will be disconnected.